I watched my best friend in the underworld for a full 10 years. That best friend who once vowed to support me for a lifetime. After marrying into a wealthy family, she was treated as a mobile blood bank by the crown prince of the capital's elite, Andy Green, to transfuse blood and sustain the life of his white moonlight. Even to make room for that green tea, he complained that the abortion pills took too long to take effect. He actually ordered people to hold down the woman who was 7 months pregnant, intending to forcibly abort that child. I was so furious that I overturned the entire pot of forgetting soup. I directly signed a high-interest loan with the underworld, burdened with the interest of the 18 layers of hell. In this life, I wasn't reborn as some peerless beauty, but had become the centenarian matriarch lying in the ICU at Andy Green's home, clinging to life by a thread. Just as Andy Green ordered his bodyguards to take action, the butler rushed in, his voice trembling. "Young master, great news! The matriarch is experiencing a sudden revival." "A sudden revival? Let her wait. I'll go over after I've dealt with matters here." Andy Green's tone was full of impatience. The bodyguard had already pinned the frail Sarah firmly against the sofa, while the private doctor beside them was preparing the instruments. Tear stains covered Sarah's face as she pleaded hoarsely. "Andy Green, I beg you, this is your child. Look at him. He's already moving." Andy Green looked coldly at Sarah. "Kathy needs to rest quietly, and the existence of this child will affect her mood. Sarah, this is what you owe her." Lying on the ICU bed, my soul having just returned to my body, I listened to the butler relay all of this over the phone and was so furious I nearly died again. "Owe her? Pa, if it weren't for Sarah saving Kathy in the snow back then, she would have long frozen to death and become a corpse on the roadside. For her sake, Sarah missed the college entrance exam and was left with a lifelong cold ailment. Yet this wretched woman actually told Andy Green that it was Sarah who caused her to contract a terminal illness. Seeing that doctor about to take action, I mustered all my strength and abruptly sat up from the hospital bed. The various instruments connected to my body instantly emitted a piercing alarm sound. "Damn it!" I grabbed the phone by the bedside and roared into it. "Tell that little bastard Andy Green to get over here and see me." The butler on the other end of the phone was scared out of his wits. "Oh, old madam? You're really awake." Andy Green also heard my voice, his face instantly changing. He dared not delay any longer, glaring fiercely at Sarah. "You got lucky this time." With that, he hurriedly hung up the phone and rushed toward the ICU. Sarah caught a brief moment of respite, slumping onto the sofa, her hand instinctively protecting her prominently swollen abdomen. Soon, Andy Green pushed the door open and entered. Seeing me sitting on the hospital bed glaring at him, the shock on his face was beyond measure. Grandma?" As he approached, I mustered all my strength and slapped him across the face. Andy Green was stunned, clutching his cheek, and looked at me in disbelief. "Grandma? Why did you hit me?" I let out a cold laugh. "I heard from the butler that you want me to wait. Andy Green, have you grown too bold now? No longer putting this old woman in your eyes?" Andy Green's face instantly turned deathly pale, and he hurriedly lowered his head. "Grandson, I dare not. I just dare not. I think you're quite bold," I sternly rebuked. "How dare you treat Sarah like that? That is my Green family's properly married granddaughter-in-law. She carries the great-grandson of my Green family in her womb. What do you take her for?" Andy Green stiffened at my scolding, his eyes flickering as he defended himself. "Grandmother, you've misunderstood. Sarah, she's just immature. I only wanted her to behave more properly." I was so angry I laughed. "The one who should behave is you. For a woman from outside, you want to kill your wife and child? If the ancestors of the Green family knew they had produced such a scoundrel, their coffin lids wouldn't be able to hold them down. If she loses even a single strand of hair, I'll break your legs today and strike your name from the Green family registry." Andy Green's fists clenched tightly at his sides, as if he were struggling to contain his fury. "But who am I? I am the Green family's only and highest-ranking ancestor." He dared not disobey. In the end, he gritted his teeth, turned around, and went out to call for someone. Watching his aggrieved retreating figure, I sneered inwardly. Andy Green, Kathy. How dare you bully my best friend like this? Your good days are over. Not long after, Sarah was supported by two servants as she walked in, trembling with fear. It had been 10 years since we last met, and she looked even more haggard than when I saw her in the underworld. Her face was as pale as paper, and the eyes that once shone like stars were now hollow and empty. My heart ached terribly. This was my best friend, who used to be as bright and radiant as the sun, the one who would stand in front of me, waving her little fists, whenever I was bullied. Sarah, who loudly declared, "Don't be afraid. I'll protect you for a lifetime." My heart felt as if it were being torn apart, and I struggled to suppress my anger as I beckoned. "Good child, come to me." She glanced at Andy Green, whose face remained expressionless, before daring to take a step forward. Looking at the purple needle marks on her wrist, my eyes grew hot. Just as I was about to speak, a sweet, delicate voice came from the doorway. "Brother Andy, why didn't you call me when the old madam woke up?" Kathy, dressed in a white dress, entered the room with a frail, willow-like grace and immediately took hold of Andy Green's arm. Andy Green's expression instantly softened. "Why are you here? The doctor said you need more rest." Kathy leaned into his arms and flashed a smile at me. "Great ancestor, you're finally awake." Just now, Andy was just too worried about me and spoke harshly. "Please don't blame him." Leaning against the headboard, I leisurely picked up the hot tea the butler had just brought, not even bothering to lift my eyelids. "Butler, when did the Green family's security become so lax? How can you let such filthy things in?" Kathy's smile froze, her eyes instantly reddening. "Brother Andy, has the old madam not yet regained consciousness?" Andy Green's expression immediately darkened, his gaze toward me devoid of any respect. "Grandma, Kathy came to see you with good intentions. What kind of attitude is this? Right now, I'm the one in charge of the Green family. Kathy is my honored guest. Even though you're a senior, don't take advantage of your age to act unreasonably." Furious, I laughed coldly and casually splashed the tea in my hand right onto Kathy's face. "Ah, my face!" Kathy screamed, covering her face as she stumbled backward, her makeup instantly smudged. Andy Green was furious and even took a step forward, trying to push my hospital bed. "You old fool! Have you lost your mind? How dare you!" I slammed the table with a sudden force, the authority I had cultivated from years in high positions instantly erupting, causing Andy Green to freeze in his tracks. "Andy Green, who gave you the nerve to disrespect me? For the sake of some low-class mistress? Are you willing to bear the shame of being unfilial? Throw this filthy, scheming thing out of here." Andy Green gritted his teeth, his fists clenched so tightly they creaked, his eyes dark and menacing as he glared at me. But in the end, he still had to consider the bodyguards outside and the reputation of the Green family, not daring to make a scene on the spot. "Fine, very well." Andy Green sneered coldly, then picked up the wailing Kathy. "Grandma, you just woke up. Don't get too worked up. Be careful not to strain your body, or you'll end up back in the hospital." After saying that, he glared fiercely at Sarah, his mouth forming a threatening shape. "I'll deal with you when we get back." Watching them leave, Sarah huddled in the corner, trembling all over. I took her cold hand, my heart aching as if pierced by a knife. "Don't be afraid, Sarah. The debts they owe you, I will collect them one by one." Andy Green clearly didn't take this old thing seriously. I ignored the doctor's objections and insisted on moving back to the Green family's old mansion that very afternoon. As soon as I entered the living room, I was met with a sight that made my blood pressure skyrocket. At the dining table, Andy Green was carefully blowing on a spoonful of premium bird's nest soup before feeding it to Kathy. Meanwhile, Sarah, with her 7-month pregnant belly, was kneeling on the floor, wiping Kathy's high heels with a cloth. "Ouch! It's scalding hot." Kathy had just taken a sip when she suddenly frowned and pushed Andy Green's hand away. The scalding bird's nest soup, along with the porcelain bowl, crashed directly onto Sarah's back as she knelt on the ground. Sarah let out a muffled groan from the pain, the hot soup making her whole body tremble. How do you do things? Instead of showing concern, Andy Green kicked her to the ground. Can't you see Kathy doesn't like to drink it? Hurry up and clean this mess. Sarah struggled to get up, tears welling in her eyes, her voice hoarse. Andy, I'm hungry. The baby is kicking me. Could you let me have a bite? Andy Green looked up and down at Sarah's swollen figure, his eyes filled with disgust. Eat? Someone of your lowly status deserves to eat bird's nest? Kathy looked down at her, covering her mouth as she chuckled softly. Brother Andy, since sister is hungry, and it would be a waste to just leave the spilled food on the ground, why not let her have it? Upon hearing this, a flicker of amusement passed through Andy Green's eyes. He pointed to the floor. Did you hear that? Kathy is giving it to you. Get down and eat it all up. Sarah looked up in disbelief. Andy Green, I am your wife. Not eating? Andy Green grabbed Sarah by the hair, forcing her face toward the ground. If you don't eat, you'll sleep in the dog cage tonight, Sarah cried out in a trembling voice. Andy Green, aren't you afraid the ancestors will hold you accountable? She's already awake today. If she sees you treating me like this. Andy Green's movements grew even rougher, his face full of disdain. Using that old hag to pressure me? Sarah, have you lost your mind? She's 100 years old, half her body's already in the grave. She might be awake today, but who knows if she'll still be breathing tomorrow. I stood at the entrance, fuming with rage. Butler, I growled in a low voice. Close the door. No one in this house is allowed to leave today. Andy Green stiffened all over, turning his head sharply. A flicker of panic flashed in his eyes, but he quickly forced himself to appear calm. Why didn't you say anything when you came back? I didn't listen to his nonsense at all, pointing at that despicable couple and shouting sternly, Guards! Seize these two beasts. Upon hearing my command, the bodyguards immediately forced Andy Green and Kathy to kneel on the ground. I picked up the bowl of bird's nest soup from the table and walked over to Kathy, whose face had turned deathly pale. Old madam. Kathy retreated in terror. Just now you said it was too hot to drink? I expressionlessly beckoned two maids over. Pry her mouth open for me. At that moment, Andy Green, driven by a surge of fierce determination, forcefully pushed away the bodyguard who was holding him down. He wrapped his arms around the terrified and limp Kathy, glaring at me with an intense stare. Let's go. He gritted out those 3 words through clenched teeth, shooting me one last fierce look. He then picked up Kathy and walked out of the hall step by step. Sarah, ignoring her own injuries, struggled to grab my sleeve, her pale face filled with terror. Ancestor, you shouldn't have pushed him to this point for my sake. Her palms were drenched in cold sweat as she reminded me in a trembling voice. Andy Green is vengeful and ruthless. After what you did to him today, he will never let it go. You must be careful. I patted her hand, my gaze turning cold as I watched Andy Green walk away. After teaching Andy Green a lesson, I thought I could enjoy a few days of peace and focus on nourishing Sarah's health. 3 days later, Kathy suddenly fainted at home and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor's diagnosis was, an urgent blood transfusion is needed, otherwise her life is in danger, and her blood type is the rare panda blood, with the only source being Sarah, who also has this blood type. Andy Green, holding the hospital's critical condition notice, knelt before me with reddened eyes, a stark contrast to his usual arrogance. Grandma, I beg you, please save Kathy, the doctor said. As long as Sarah gives her a blood transfusion, she can pull through. She's pregnant. I was trembling with anger. Are you out of your mind? Asking a woman who's over 7 months pregnant to give blood to Kathy? But Kathy will die. Andy Green let out a pained cry. Ancestor, Sarah is strong and healthy. Losing a little blood won't hurt her. I can't live without her. Looking at his love-crazed face, I felt nothing but disgust. Sarah stood behind me, her body trembling. She desperately shielded her own belly. I won't go. My Sarah, you finally know to protect yourself and the child. I felt a slight relief in my heart, but my expression grew even colder. Did you hear that? She said she's not going. Andy Green, I'm putting it out there, today. No one will lay a finger on Sarah. Upon hearing my refusal, Andy Green's face instantly twisted with rage. You old fool. You're forcing my hand. Since you're too senile to understand what's at stake, I'll make this decision for you. Before the words had even fully left his mouth, he actually raised his foot and viciously kicked toward me. How could this frail body of mine withstand such force? I was sent crashing heavily to the ground. Excruciating pain spread throughout my body, feeling as if my old bones were about to fall apart. Ancestor! Sarah let out a piercing scream, desperately trying to rush over and support me. But Andy Green didn't give her the chance. He grabbed Sarah by her long hair. He forcibly dragged her, heavily pregnant, up from the ground. Ah! Sarah arched her head back in pain, instinctively protecting her belly with both hands. Andy Green, his face twisted with rage, dragged her toward the door, roaring, "Stop shouting! Kathy is still waiting on the operating table. Every minute you go earlier gives her one more chance to live." Sarah struggled desperately, her cries heart-wrenching. Andy Green, it's your child in my belly. It's already 7 months. Drawing so much blood will cause the baby to die from lack of oxygen. Andy Green paused in his steps, turned back, his gaze icy cold. Sarah, we can have another child, but Kathy is the only one. I lay sprawled on the ground, my eyes wide with fury. Andy Green, if you dare touch her, I'll haunt you even as a ghost. I roared hoarsely. Andy Green snorted coldly and roared at the bodyguards at the door who were already petrified with fear. What are you all standing there for? Come and help. Hold this old thing down for me. I'll take responsibility if anything goes wrong. The bodyguards exchanged glances, intimidated by Andy Green's oppressive authority. To their surprise, someone actually stepped forward and restrained Sarah's struggling hands and feet. Sarah struggled desperately, her eyes filled with despair. My heart ached so intensely in that moment. It was almost unbearable, seeing that she still dared to resist. Andy Green's face turned ashen with rage. You ungrateful wretch! You don't even know how to cooperate obediently. Do you have to suffer some physical pain to learn? Just as Sarah was about to be dragged out of the main gate, a furious roar came from outside the door. Stop! Andy Green, you unfilial descendant! How dare you lay a hand on the old madam? Upon hearing this voice, Andy Green's face instantly turned deathly pale. Andy Green's older brother, Charles Green. He rushed in, accompanied by several stern-faced elders of the family, covered in dust and looking weary from the journey. Charles Green took in the chaotic scene before him, his face turning livid with anger. In a flash, he charged forward and delivered a fierce slap across Andy Green's face. He looked at his older brother in disbelief. Big brother? How did you get back? If I didn't come back, this family would have been torn apart by you. You beast! Charles Green was so angry that his chest heaved violently, pointing at his nose and cursing loudly. For the sake of some disreputable woman, you actually dared to lay a hand on our ancestors? What on earth is going through your mind? You've completely disgraced the Green family's reputation. The several senior family members who had returned with him also glared angrily at Andy Green. Andy, you've gone too far this time. It was me who had subtly signaled to the butler when Andy Green laid hands on me. Have him notify Charles Green and all core family members in the capital immediately. Andy Green was scolded by everyone until his face turned pale, but he still stubbornly insisted. Brother, uncles, you don't understand, Kathy is in critical condition. She needs blood. Nonsense. I sneered coldly, slamming a document right into his face. Open your damn eyes and see for yourself what this is. It was the latest assessment report on Kathy's condition, prepared by a top hematology expert I had the butler arrange to bring in from abroad. The report stated in black and white, Kathy's blood type is indeed rare, but her condition is not life-threatening. It can be completely controlled with medication. The so-called acute critical illness is nothing more than a performance she and her attending physician put on together, and that attending physician received a huge bribe from the Lin family. This can't be. Andy Green stared at the report, muttering in a daze. Kathy wouldn't lie to me. whether she lied to you or not. Don't you have any idea in your heart? I watched him with a cold gaze. You only know she needs blood. But do you know she's using the money you give her to keep a young lover outside? And how many messes has she cleaned up for her worthless brother in your name? All of this I saw when I was in the underworld. With every word I spoke, Andy Green's face grew paler. No, you're talking nonsense. Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, why don't you go check for yourself? I couldn't be bothered to waste any more words on him and directly gave the order. Charles Green, grandson is here. Charles Green immediately responded respectfully. From today onward, strip Andy Green of all his positions in the group and make him go kneel in the ancestral hall to reflect on his mistakes. That woman named Kathy, and that heartless doctor, report them to the police immediately. Charge them with fraud and intentional harm. And as for the blood Charles owes my Sarah, calculate every drop of it clearly. No one in the Green family will suffer injustice in vain. My words fell with a resounding thud, and no one dared to refute them. Charles Green immediately nodded. Yes, Grandma, I'll go take care of it right away. Andy Green collapsed completely to the ground, his eyes vacant. I walked over to Sarah, who was still shaken, and helped her up. Sarah, it's all right now. From now on, do whatever you want to do. If the sky falls, your ancestor will hold it up for you. Sarah looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears, and finally, she nodded heavily. A glimmer of hope reignited in her eyes. Andy Green was confined to the ancestral hall, while Kathy and her attending physician were taken away by the police for investigation. I had the kitchen prepare the finest tonic and personally watched Sarah finish it. Seeing a faint blush gradually return to her pale face, I finally felt a little more at ease. In the evening, the two of us sat under the osmanthus tree in the courtyard to cool off. I fanned myself with a cattail leaf fan, listening to Sarah speak softly to me. She was both confused and deeply grateful. Ancestor, I don't know why. You've been so kind to me. She lowered her head, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her clothes. I'm just a breeding tool bought by the Green family. Nonsense. I interrupted her. You are the rightful young mistress of the Green family, the granddaughter-in-law I personally acknowledged. Who dares to call you a breeding tool? Sarah's body trembled slightly as she looked up at me, her eyes flickering with nostalgia and sorrow. Grandma, I also had a friend like that, who was so good to me, she whispered, as if revealing a secret she had kept buried in her heart for a long time. Her name is Natalie. We grew up together in the orphanage since we were little. She had a sharp tongue, but her heart was the kindest. Every time I was bullied, she would be the first to rush out and protect me. Later, she died in a car accident while trying to save me. Sarah's voice choked up. Before she passed away, she told me that I must live happily, to live for both of us. But I haven't managed to do it. She caressed her belly, tears streaming down. I married Andy Green, thinking I had found happiness. But in the end, I've made a mess of my life. I'm so useless. I've let her down. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. I held her cold hand. No, you have nothing to be sorry for. I looked into her eyes and spoke each word deliberately. If she were still alive, she wouldn't want to see you blaming yourself like this. She would only want you to stand up again and live your own life. Sarah, you are not an appendage to anyone. You are yourself, the one and only Sarah. Sarah, what dreams did you have before? Before Sarah married Andy Green, she was a well-known jewelry designer in China. Her works were full of creativity and had even won international awards. Yet for Andy Green, she gave up her career, put aside her ambitions to cook for him, only to end up in such a state. Mentioning dreams, Sarah's eyes flickered for a moment before dimming again. It's all in the past. Not yet, I said with absolute certainty. As long as you want, you can start over anytime. The next day, I used my dowager's private assets and connections to establish a top-tier jewelry design studio in Sarah's name. From site selection and decoration to team building, only the best was used. I handed over the keys to the studio and all the documents to her. Sarah, this is for you. Not from the Green family. It's your own. I don't care what you've been through before. From now on, go do what you want to do. Become who you want to be. The young mistress of the Green family should not be just a resentful woman confined to the inner chambers. You must show everyone that without Andy Green, you, Sarah, will only live more brilliantly. Sarah held the bunch of keys, gazing at the brand new studio before her. And finally, she burst into loud, unrestrained sobs. That was the first time she had cried so freely and thoroughly since marrying into the Green family. After crying, she wiped away her tears and bowed deeply to me. Thank you, ancestor. I know, my dear friend, she has returned. Sarah's studio quickly got on track. She poured all her energy into her designs. In just a few months, her work amazed the entire fashion world, and I became her most loyal fan and supporter. She stayed up late drawing, and I stayed up with her. When her inspiration ran dry, I would take her to listen to crosstalk and watch stand-up comedy. I would tell her all the gossipy stories I had heard in the underworld. Seeing her find her smile again made me happier than anyone else. However, the tree may desire stillness, but the wind will not cease. Andy Green, confined in the ancestral hall, showed no genuine remorse. Kathy was convicted of fraud and intentional assault, with the evidence being conclusive. This news completely provoked Andy Green. He blamed all the faults on Sarah and me. He secretly contacted the outside world by bribing the servants. Upon learning that Sarah's career was now thriving, his jealousy burned even more fiercely. In his eyes, Sarah was a caged canary he had raised, and everything about her should belong to him. How dare she fly without his permission? Finally, on a stormy night, he pried open the lock of the ancestral hall and escaped. He went straight to Sarah's studio. At that time, Sarah was making final preparations for the upcoming international jewelry exhibition and had been staying in the studio for several days. Due to my advanced age, the doctor forced me to stay at the old house to rest. By the time I got the news, Andy Green had already smashed open the studio door. He grabbed Sarah by the hair, threw her violently to the ground, and trampled the scattered design drafts into a mess. Sarah, you despicable woman! His eyes were bloodshot, his face twisted with rage. Kathy was sent to prison because of you. And here you are, living the high life. Have you forgotten your place? You are my dog. Andy Green's dog. I decide whether you live or die. Who gave you permission to go out and show your face? Sarah was thrown so hard that her head spun and her vision blurred, a sharp pain shooting through her abdomen. But she no longer cried and begged for mercy as she had before. She pushed herself up from the ground, lifted her head with difficulty, and stared at him coldly. Andy Green, I am no longer the Sarah I used to be. If you dare lay a hand on me again, I swear you'll regret it. Her gaze was icy cold. Andy Green was momentarily intimidated by her stare, then grew furious with shame. Regret? I think the one who should regret is you. He sneered, advancing step by step. Do you think that old woman can protect you for a lifetime? She's a dying person. Today, I'll make you and the child in your womb accompany Kathy in death. He raised his hand high. Sarah instinctively closed her eyes, tightly shielding her abdomen with both hands. However, the expected slap never came. The studio door was kicked open with a bang. Leaning on my crutch, I stood there with a row of bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses behind me. Leading them was Charles, and the top legal team in the capital, which I hired, Andy Green. I looked at the beast before me, my voice icy cold. Let's discuss the matter of your divorce with Sarah. Divorce? He turned around, looking at me, his face full of madness. Old fool, who do you think you are? You think you can just say divorce, and it's done? Sarah is my wife. She can never leave me in this lifetime. Is that so? The top-tier lawyer behind me stepped forward, slamming a thick stack of documents in front of him. Mr. Green, here is all the evidence of your marital infidelity and the transfer of marital assets, along with the long-term mental and physical abuse of your wife, Ms. Sarah, and the attempted premeditated murder, including your hotel check-in records and financial transactions with Ms. Kathy. The recording of you forcing a mess. Sarah to have an abortion, along with the video of your violent behavior in the studio just now. The lawyer's tone was calm yet filled with pressure. We can absolutely sue you with this evidence. By then, not only will you have to leave with nothing, but you will likely also face imprisonment. As for the impact on the Green family's reputation and the stock price of Green Corporation, I believe Mr. Green understands it better than I do. Andy Green's face instantly turned deathly pale. He never expected that we had gathered so much evidence. I walked over to Sarah, helping her to her feet. Then, I turned around and looked at him calmly. Andy, for the sake of our bond as grandmother and grandson, I'm giving you one last chance. Divorce by agreement. Sarah will receive the financial compensation she deserves. The child will be under her custody, and will have the right to inherit from the Green family, but will have no further connection to you. Sign this, and I will treat these pieces of evidence as if they never existed. Otherwise, a cold glint flashed in my eyes. We'll see each other in court. Andy Green's body trembled violently as he stared fixedly at Sarah, his eyes filled with resentment. He never imagined that this woman, who had always endured his every whim and loved him as if her life depended on it, would truly leave him. Sarah, he roared. You can't do this to me. Didn't you say you loved me? Sarah looked at him, her gaze calm and unruffled. She smiled, a smile filled with relief. Yes, I loved you. When I was lying in the snow, nearly frozen to death to save Kathy, it was you who found me and held me in your arms. At that time, I thought you were my hero. When I gave up my dreams for you, put aside my ambitions to cook and care for the home, I thought that being a wife and mother would be my lifelong happiness. When I was carrying your child, and you kept drawing my blood to save another woman, I was still making excuses for you, telling myself you were just being deceived by her. Her voice was soft, yet each word felt like a knife, piercing Andy Green's heart. But, Andy Green, when you were about to kill your own child with your own hands, I knew that the man I loved had long been dead. Or perhaps he never existed at all. Sarah raised her hand, gently touching her lower abdomen, her eyes filled with an unprecedented tenderness and determination. Now, I only love him. So, I agree to the divorce. Andy Green completely broke down. He looked at the woman before him, radiant and no longer his, and finally tasted the bitterness of regret. The divorce proceedings went surprisingly smoothly. Faced with irrefutable evidence and the immense pressure from the entire Green family, Andy Green had no choice but to sign the divorce agreement. Sarah not only received half of the assets under Andy Green's name, he also received a substantial amount of compensation for emotional distress. Furthermore, in the name of the matriarch, I transferred 20% of the shares in the Green Corporation under my name in advance to Sarah's unborn child. Andy Green was left almost penniless, holding only the empty title of heir. He was completely sidelined by Charles Green and driven out of the power center of the Green family. Meanwhile, Sarah, after giving birth to a healthy baby boy, reached the peak of her career. Her work became an instant hit at the International Jewelry Exhibition, with orders pouring in like snowflakes. She became the most sought-after designer in the fashion world, an idol worshipped by countless women. She is confident, independent, and beautiful, living exactly as I had always hoped she would. That day, she came to see me, holding her baby who had already learned to smile. The afternoon sun shone warmly in the courtyard as I lay in the rocking chair. I could feel my vitality slowly fading away. I know that this final radiance I borrowed from the underworld is about to expire. Sarah placed the child beside me, then took a picture frame from her bag and handed it to me. Ancestor, this is for you. I took it. In the painting were two little girls with pigtails, crouching in the corner of the orphanage, laughing without a care in the world. One is me, the other is her. My eyes instantly welled up with tears. Ancestor, Sarah crouched down beside me, her voice soft, carrying a hint of barely perceptible hesitation. I don't know why, but being with you always reminds me of her. My friend, Natalie. She used to love calling me Little Turtle, saying I did everything so slowly. As she spoke, her eyes grew red. She always said that when we grew up, She would earn lots and lots of money, buy me the prettiest dresses, and let me be a little princess for the rest of my life. Ancestor, do you think she can see me from up in the sky now? Will she be happy for me? My time is running out. The power of the underworld's contract is pulling at my soul. With the last of my strength, I grasped her hand and looked into her eyes. Smiling, gently, almost in a whisper, I spoke the words I had buried for years. I will. My good turtle. In an instant, Sarah's eyes flew wide open. Her pupils were filled with shock and disbelief. She opened her mouth, as if wanting to say something, and I, with a satisfied smile, slowly closed my eyes. At the moment my soul left my body, I saw her throw herself over me, crying as if her heart were breaking. Natalie, is that you? Natalie! I'm sorry, sweetie. I can no longer stay with you. Goodbye, my dearest friend. My funeral was held with great splendor and grandeur. All the prominent figures from the entire Beijing social circle attended. Sarah, dressed in black, stood in the front row of the family section, holding a child in her arms. She took care of everything on my behalf, acting as the eldest grandson's wife in place of Andy Green. She did not cry, but her eyes were hollow. Andy Green was also there, emaciated and standing in a corner like an irrelevant stranger. He looked at Sarah, surrounded by the crowd and shining brightly, with a complex gaze filled with regret and resentment. After the funeral, it was time for the will reading. Everyone thought that the vast personal assets and Green Corporation shares under my name would be inherited by Charles or Andy Green. However, when the lawyer opened the will, cleared his throat, and read out that name, the entire room erupted in an uproar. I, Susan, matriarch of the Green family, hereby voluntarily bequeath all my personal property, including but not limited to real estate, securities, bank deposits, and 30% of the shares in the Green Corporation, all to be given to my granddaughter-in-law, Ms. Sarah. 30%, plus the 20% previously given to the child. Sarah alone now holds 50% of the shares in the Green Corporation. She has become the largest shareholder of the Green Corporation. Wielding absolute authority, Charles Green and the family elders were all stunned. Andy Green's face turned ashen, completely collapsing into his chair. At the end of the will was a message I had left behind. To my dear Sarah, by the time you read this letter, I will have already departed. Please do not grieve for me. You remind me of someone from the past, who was once the only light in my life. I failed to protect her, and it remains a lifelong regret. Fortunately, heaven has allowed me to meet you. Seeing you reborn is the greatest comfort of my life. I am at ease leaving the family business to you and Charles. May you, for the rest of your life, be safe, joyful, free, and brilliant, living as the person you most wish to be, just as she once hoped. Sarah looked at the will, tears once again flooding her eyes. She finally understood that none of this was a coincidence. It was her Natalie, transcending life and death, coming back to save her. The underworld, the forgetting bridge. I held the soup handed to me by forgetting envoy, about to drink it all in one gulp. Wait! The judge of the underworld, holding the book of life and death, ran over panting heavily. Natalie! You can't drink that. I was completely baffled. Why? I've already paid off all my debts. The judge wiped his sweat, his face a picture of misery as he said, the debt is cleared, but your rebirth this time caused such a huge commotion that it completely disrupted the order of the heavenly Tao. The king of hell has decreed that to make up for this loophole, you must go back. Go back? Yes. Go back. Return to your old lady's body and keep on living. The bowl in my hand clattered to the floor. What? I have to go back and be that 100-year-old old lady again? The judge of the underworld nodded. The king of hell has said that since you have managed the Green family so well and accumulated merit, you are granted an extension of 50 years to your life, along with a healthy body. I was stunned, then my face lit up with wild joy. The next moment, I felt a tremendous force pulling at me. Opening my eyes again, I saw the familiar white ceiling of the hospital. Sarah was leaning over my bedside, her eyes red from crying. Seeing me wake up, she froze for a moment, then threw herself at me, holding me tightly. Natalie! You're back. You're really back. I felt her real body warmth and familiar embrace, and couldn't help but feel my eyes welling up. I raised my hand and, just like when we were kids, ruffled her hair. What are you crying for? You big dummy, Sarah. I said I'd protect you for a lifetime.